can just start off by just telling me about yourself. We're gonna kind of just go right into it. I don't like to do too much of an introduction. I feel like you can speak for yourself.
Hi. So my name is Stefanie Belnavis. I go by pronouns she, her, hers. I am a lot of things. I am a licensed mental health clinician, a registered dance movement therapist, a parent-child psychotherapist, and a self-taught photographer. So I'm the founder of the Diane Project and more recently the Diane Project Births. I'm from Jamaica and I completely rep Jamaica through and through. But I've lived in Boston for about the past 8 years. Historically, I've always really identified as a creative. My background is actually in dance. So my first degree is in contemporary modern dance, and I, transitioned to my master's in dance movement therapy, which is also what brought me here to Boston originally. But I have to say, my first understanding of self came through movement and feeling like I can be successful in a space that's not necessarily academic in a traditional sense. So for me, dance, being creative, being in collaboration with people is something that I've just always known in my body and known in the spaces that I occupy with really amazing and creative people from Jamaica to Boston to UK. I did my undergrad in the UK. So just always seeking and being in spaces where you're continually inspired is something that I think has pushed me to the place that I'm at right now. I've always loved photography. I was that person in high school and prep school who, back, I don't know if y'all remember this, but when you had film cameras and disposable cameras, literally my childhood friends will say if they want to catalog any part of their life, just check Stefanie, because I literally have everything printed out.
I love that.
Love archiving our lives. But in 2017, after years of I would love to explore photography some more on my own, finally I was all right, I'm gonna buy a camera, and I bought a Canon DSLR, and literally my mindset was let me just explore this. Historically, as I said, I've been super creative and was always dancing, but in 2010 I woke up and literally couldn't see. I had a sporadic retinal detachment, which I was in and out of a number of surgeries for about 2.5 years, and ultimately I am actually blind in my left eye and severely visually impaired in my right. And that was kind of a big moment in my life creatively where I paused. I physically couldn't move and be a mover or the dancer or choreographer that I identified prior, because my body was just, I couldn't be as engaged in movement because of precautions to make sure that I don't damage my only functioning eye. And so that then led into me transitioning into grad school, because I'd always wanted to pursue dance movement therapy even from before my undergrad. And I was you know what, once I got the clearance for that last and 9th surgery, I was okay, I'm moving to Boston, I'm coming here. While I was doing my graduate studies, parts of my own lived experiences and this idea of loss and grief, loss of your creative self, loss of parts of your independence, becoming differently abled, came up. And so in my final year of grad school, my thesis was around, really embodying self after, such major changes. So what is it like for, I'll say former dancer, former mover, to really tap into dance movement therapy as a way to, provide self-care and, provide support. Fast forward to 2017 when I was all right, so I haven't been moving for years at this point. Haven't been really in any creative spaces, even though my support circle here is it's a lot of creative people. Not really feeling confident and just being you know what, I'm going to focus on this one thing for me. I don't have major expectations, because historically I would okay, I have to have a plan and I have to be this type of person or this type of creative. Honestly, just letting the process evolve. My friend circle here in Boston, the community, they were open to, me photographing them. I was always walking around with my camera and just exploring. And I discovered or rediscovered my passion for storytelling. So when I was identified as a dancer or choreographer in a historical sense, I wasn't a choreographer that was going to put movement on you. We would have a discussion as as collaborators and talk about, like, what is it, what is this talk, when you hear this prompt or this theme, how does it apply in your life, and what are ways that you're moving. And I know now, being a dance movement therapist, that connects to authentic movements and ways in which we can improvise and tap into the ways that we naturally move and we naturally respond to things in our life. And I wanted to transfer that. Well, actually, it happened naturally. I wanted to make sure that was a very strong intention in the work that I do with my photography. So not just like, hey, Pauline, let me just stay right there, like telling you how to be, but more so asking. Having consults with people before to kind of figure out like what is the importance of these images, or having conversations about how they're experiencing life and how it is that I can collaborate with them to bring that to life. So, having conversation, not just like assuming.
I definitely get that vibe.
Yeah. So the Diane project, Diane is my middle name, and it's very symbolic because it celebrates the intersecting points of who I am. So the Stefanie before, the Stefanie now, the person prior to being visually impaired, the person I am now. It's all these intersecting points, and that's also something that I celebrate in the people that I collaborate with. So it's a long way to to get to, but just really being intentional about people's stories, honoring them, never wanting to speak for anyone, and asking more questions, being curious. So yeah.
For me personally, why I was attracted to your essence and why, I really wanted you to be a part of this was because I really understand what it's like to not be understood. I struggle with my mental health. I have PTSD that causes me to be very forgetful. I'll always, forget little details, and it makes people question my intelligence. It makes people question if they can take me seriously. And so I made a commitment to myself. I made a promise to myself that if I was ever going to work in any industry, but especially a creative type of platform, I wanted to, like you, make sure that I'm never telling people stories, and make sure that I'm always asking people, who are you? And do you even want to be seen as a who? Like, how do you even want to go about the process of being discovered? And so why I was attracted to your essence, as I was saying, was because I got this vibe when I was looking at your profile that this is definitely a soul that is self-taught, and has really mastered how to just present different people's stories. Because when I was looking at all of your pictures, I noticed that every single picture, it just had its own energy to it, and it was still within your vibe and your theme, but it was definitely a collaboration.
I think a big part of it is honestly how I was raised, and just always the ways in which my parents supported our creative self and allowed us to be in community with some amazing people who you learn through words, spoken word, but you also learn through their character, like how they present. And I would have to say, honestly, my own lived experience, I literally had a huge pivot at 24. I had to. Physically, I had to figure out, am I going to cry about this or...
Right.
No. Yes, I'll cry about this, and also how am I going to weave this into the person that I am?
Right.
Am I going to...
Don't let it make you become bitter.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, a lot of people have different responses to trauma. I don't want to ever generalize.
Right.
But I know for me, my response was, all right, Steph, feel this, feel what's going on, don't ignore it. And I physically couldn't ignore it.
Right.
But also, how do you kind of pick up the pieces and pick up the parts of yourself that still feel comfortable and still feel familiar? And that, it took me a couple years, honestly.
Right.
Yeah, it took me a while to get back into that creative self, creative space. I could have easily not listened to that. I could have easily in 2017 be like, nah, Steph, you can't be a photographer. Because I was so married to my identity as a dancer, as a choreographer. And I think you mentioned as well your own struggles with mental illness, and I will definitely name that as well. I feel like the honesty and genuineness that I approach persons who I collaborate or get the amazing
Yeah.
opportunity to collaborate with is because I am somebody who lives my life in a very real way. I don't try and sugarcoat that like life is all perfect. I understand my professional role as a clinician, and I understand my creative self. And I think I just, since 2017 in particular, just been like, you know what? I'm feeling that these two are fusing. These parts of myself no longer have to be separate. I need to bring them. I need to figure out ways in which I continue to be myself in this collective way. And it's interesting, like making that decision or coming to that realization, because my work started to change. My interactions with folks started to change. My line of questioning creatively started to change, and I realized that things around me were like, oh yeah, like it's like the universe knew that already, and I was just kind of like I was late to the party, but I'm here. I've arrived. So I think it's one of those things. I believe in energy. I believe
Yes.
I believe in nature and the universe, like putting things in your path, whether they're challenging or whether they're amazing things,
Yeah.
or both. And it's just a matter of how do you respond to that. And for me, it was diving into a more creative understanding. I like to say this word, creative health, because as you know, I was in school to become a mental health clinician. I'm like, yep. So how is your mental health? And people, the new year, people are like, oh, I'm gonna have all these like physical health goals, and it's like,
Right.
okay, what about your mental health? And then also
Right.
like, how is your creative health?
Right.
Identifying that is also a really strong part of who I am. And again, I'm somebody who's also, which I know is also a privilege. I'm very comfortable naming the intersecting parts of my cultural identity.
Yeah.
I know for some folks they're not able to do that for
Yeah.
varying reasons. And I lean into that. I really do lean into that. It's one of the things, as again, I'm not from Boston, but I've been here for 8+ years, and I've had to figure out what it means to be like a Boston transplant, be a Black Caribbean immigrant,
Right.
differently abled woman,
Right.
seeking and receiving and
Right.
connecting with a creative community here. What does that mean?
Right.
And I think my work is continuing to evolve and like share how that exists here. I've been really, really lucky to collaborate with a lot of amazing, amazing, amazing BIPOC folks. Yeah.
And just to, again, like taking in everything that you're sharing, something that I noticed too is you seem very open, but also very self-assured and very self-aware. And I really respect that, because I think it's very easy, you're talking about trauma, it's very easy, not to generalize, but just in my personal experiences of trauma, it's very easy to have an angry response, or to get closed off and to become bitter, because what we're talking about too is transitioning and change. And like you said, you had one understanding of your identity, and then it was radically shifted, and the universe almost was challenging you to transition with a very harsh way of coming to that understanding. For me, I think I can't talk about, being an artist or being a creative, you touched upon this too, without talking about spirituality, without talking about, understanding that this is all much bigger than us. And, when I walk down the street, I'm 5'11", I always notice like little Black girls like staring at me, and I can see that they're almost, in awe of me. And I always want to look at them and kind of give them that reassurance that, anything that I do, you can do too, if not better. And so, with everything that's going on right now, 2020, and just the continued just heartache of Black and brown people, how is that affecting your spirituality as an artist? And what advice would you give to younger Black youth who are trying to figure out their voice? Very large question.
Yeah.
I really just delivered that like it was like a very
No,
easy question.
I think one of the major things that I know, not I think, one of the major things that 2020, the 10th, because I feel like we're in the 10th year of 2020, has shown is the resilience. And I say that like, not necessarily only thinking of it in a positive way, because I feel like sometimes as people of color, we can just keep going despite
we're too strong.
like
I say this all the time. As Black and brown people, we have gotten too good at being strong.
Yeah. And so I feel like it's been nice to kind of, not that we've not known the power of our voices,
Right.
but really see how non-BIPOC folks are finally waking up. I think my message is to take care of ourselves,
Right.
because we've been advocating for a very long time. You know, I hate when we're oftentimes made to feel like, our experiences are non-existent or gaslit. I'm not here for that.
Yeah.
Creatively, I encourage. I'm always saying this, like, okay, so how is this showing up in your body? How is it showing up in your art? How is it showing up in your way of thinking? Coming back to your body is something that is revolutionary.
Well
you
said.
know yeah, so that's like the piece that I always kind of try to offer to folks. Not try to enter every conversation like I'm a therapist, because that's annoying and not really realistic or relatable sometimes, but really just as a person, like, where when you had that conversation, or if the fact that you've slept the whole day because you just can't get up out of bed, acknowledging that, like, what's happening internally, and being a support, figuring out what community really looks like going forward for folks. That has been super enlightening to kind of see where spaces that no longer serve me,
Right.
as a person,
Right.
creatively, everything, and this idea as well of like slowing down and not overcommitting.
Right.
Really being intentional about the spaces that you occupy, empowering yourself to occupy those spaces as a person of color, especially as a Black person right now. Owning that, completely owning that. Whether you're the only one in the room, because oftentimes
Right.
we're the only one. So,
Right.
yeah.
Right. And again, I've never met you. This is my first time meeting you. I like to say I have like a third eye for energy through Instagram. I'm like, oh, I think I could, work with this person. Oh, I don't think I'd work well with that person. And I do see you as a leader. And I was telling you that a little more earlier. The reason why I see you as a leader is I think it's very hard to be self-taught, for obvious reasons, but also because I know for myself, it may leave you thinking, do I deserve this? If someone who is more professionally taught enters the space, should I, shut up and just let them lead? Do I have the right to lead? Do I have the right to even question someone else's authority? Do I have the right to even tell someone that, hey, I don't agree with you, and actually I think this is a more suitable idea? And so I really look up to people like yourself who are able to just have a vision and keep going. And talking a little bit about leadership, what would you say you look for in a leader, and who are some of the people that have inspired you on your journey?
One of the things that I would think will always struggle with this is this idea of how it is that we value education. And this is definitely coming from my background as being Caribbean and being raised to value education and thinking about what makes you a professional and what makes you credible and what legitimizes you. And that's something I had to unlearn from myself, because I'm definitely somebody who's like, get the whole alphabet behind your last name. Like, let's go all the way. If we're going to do in school, like, let's do school.
Right.
And I've through this process, like, let go of that. The fact is, I love photography and I love exploring and being creative through my camera. And I wouldn't say I've completely gotten over this idea of like, are you really a professional? Are you really a photographer? Or are you an imposter? I just wanted to put it on the table, because that's like something that I think maybe a lot of people may be viewing this, maybe like, oh, actually, yeah, like I can resonate that, or they may be like, no, I'm completely grounded in myself in this way. I think for me it's a process, and it depends on what day, you know. But to your point, I think what continues to be relevant for me and important and helps to ground me are the people and the references as leaders. And honestly, it's folks who, some of them have all the qualifications as photographers or creatives. But for me, it's the people who see beyond that a little bit, and they're choosing to document with respect and in collaboration.
I like the word respect.
Yeah. Because I think even without, and this is not knocking people who have all the degrees and all the certifications. I think that's amazing.
Right.
Maybe one day I'll get to that point or not, and that's okay. But I think I'm more so drawn to creatives, because it's not just limited to photographers. I have some really amazing folks in the dance community here, other different creative areas that they're connection to the work is from a personal, spiritual, collaborative
Mhm.
approach, and I
Mhm.
think that's what fuels me to like keep going and really help me position myself in a way that okay, that doesn't work for me, but this really works, and I can see and I can have a point of reference.
Mm.
The storytelling part of it is something that I think I'm mostly drawn to.
Mm.
So forgive me for not naming folks, but
No, 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 no.
I think it's more the process.
Yeah.
Um, and to your point about like being a leader, I see it as being like a change maker, like an
Mm.
innovator.
Mm.
Um, and that could be anything for anyone. For
Right.
me, it's this idea of being grounded in your own lived experience, and also making sure that like the thoughtfulness in which you put in your work
Mm.
translates.
Mm.
As you said, like this is the first time we're meeting, and there was a different connection to my work as well, which I'm honored to hear. Like that is super dope. That like anyone can look at my work and I'm like, oh great, okay, awesome. Like or have more questions, or like
Mm.
have a point of reference for maybe something that you're doing in your
Right.
life. Like that's what's
Right.
up. And I think that's also like a universal collaboration. We've never met, but this becomes a point of reference, and also just reassuring that that there are other people that are doing work in a similar way.
Yeah.
Because I think for me, like I didn't know up until like maybe 2 or 3 years ago that there are other people here.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
that's me choosing to be vulnerable. Like what, Seth? Like
Yeah.
you got to step out and you have to like just put
It's
your work out
hard.
there, and but I'm grounded in why I'm putting my work out there. It's really for the persons who I'm collaborating with and honoring their stories. So
Mm.
I'm not necessarily saying I'm not someone who's like doing this for like larger
Yeah.
success. It's more like let's think about how we engage with people and how we consider their stories, or what do we know or what do we don't know.
So, with that being said, what do you want people to take away from your work? If you could have any say so in that, what would you want people to remember you with? I don't want to say bye, but remember you with.
I think definitely my journey to get here, and the idea that it's traditional and it's not traditional, and that is absolutely okay. Um, Normalizing that you can also have different passions, and that sometimes they may come together and sometimes they need to be separate.
Mm.
If you told me 4 years later that I would be a licensed mental health clinician, do a lot of work in early childhood mental health, and also found my own
Yeah.
photography business that focuses on portraits,
Yeah.
on dance photography, and then an extension of that is the Dime Project Births, which is documenting perinatal stories for BIPOC communities. Because when you look at, you do a Google search, for example, and you're like, oh, what does birth photography look like? 9 out of 10 times, you're probably not going to see a Black or BIPOC family. That's something that I want to change. I want to normalize beautiful images, depth to our lives. Not just beautiful images as well, but like the stories behind them. So this idea of always being curious and also being in community with that. Yeah, I think
Mm.
that's this idea, because I didn't think I was gonna be here like in this capacity 4 years ago. I was just like, I'm just gonna buy this camera and we're gonna see what's happening.
Mm.
And now it's become a business. It's become a
Mm.
huge part of my life that
Mm.
I'm super grateful for,
Mm.
because if I had listened to
Right.
all the voices and like all
Right.
the ways in which this would not work,
Right.
I wouldn't be here in this creative space
Right.
talking to you and like really being able to feel comfortable about my journey. Yeah.